Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to week 7 in This Week in Politics. I'm your host, Karina Fraser, and how was your week? Hoping everyone had a lovely week, and Christmas is just around the corner, and if you're not panicked, well, you're not doing my thing. I'm definitely panicked. The children are asking for different things, and I don't think any of it's going to really make them happy. But that's where we're at. Uh, okay. First thing that we have today. Oh, okay. Hoping everyone is hold on. Hoping everyone has had a wonderful week this week. I, however, had a very full week, so we'll get jumped straight into it. And I want to talk about the main topics of some of the men in politics, some of the dynamics of Albo being Prime Minister, some of it talking about how the men treat women. This is mostly going to talk about uh, some of the big issues that I think that we need to be actively aware of as we head into this election cycle. Make no mistake, the nastiness has already begun. Several people I know have dropped truthful links and been dropped off Facebook for doing so. I don't know Facebook's motive. I don't know if that was part of the deal that they made with these organisations, that the Conservatives still got their piece of it all. Every time they think that they're going to revamp something, it's the left that get attacked first, but the right will bitch and moan and tell you that they're the perpetual victims of every crime that ever existed. Okay, first up, I'm going to share my screen with you to talk about my first story. So it's been a year of bad behaviour and short-lived politics, so why aren't more people predicting a coalition loss? I wonder if that's based upon, I don't know, the media not giving Albo airtime enough, and every scandal that the coalition has, they sort of cover it up or pretend like ICAC shouldn't be a thing now when you go after a Conservative. That's just my take on it, but we'll see how ABC writes about it, because as you know, they've sort of taken that office too. A political journalist Political journalists are often accused, sometimes of quite correctly, being too obsessed with how the political game is played rather than with what the political system is delivering. We are accused of spending too much time in race calling and reporting on policies, purely in terms of how they might affect political prospects of the major parties. There is an argument to be made that those rules have been upended this year, as there has been so much in the era of a pandemic, but not because journalists have necessarily mended their ways. It's good to have ABC recognise clearly that things haven't been great on their end. They've been upended because the pandemic politics has rewritten so many rules about the politics and the relationship between the federal and state governments. For starters, but also the language of the fiscal talks. But they've also been upended this year because of politics, at least for the federal level. It has been dominated by such an unrelenting, appalling daily diet of bad behaviour, questionable grasp on the concept of accountability, and repeated spectacular revelations of rotting taxpayers' funds for political gain, and almost a puerile calendar of media stunts and short-lived political positions. Now, I would like for if it actually touched on a huge amount of these, but that's typically not how these works. They maybe touch maybe one or two big hot topics, the big stuff, but it doesn't go on the micro level and touch this stuff. Um, just making sure everything's okay. It says much of the gap between the information we have about how our voters are feeling about our politicians derived from public polls, focus groups, and utter lack of quality governance served up to us has not until now translated into confident predictions that the Morrison government is at serious risk of being turfed out of office when it eventually goes to the polls, as its poor record um, this year might normally suggest. What video did they go with? Oh, they've dubbed him as a political liar. Who's Oh, there's going to be an ad. Yeah, everyone else is always lying, aren't they, Scott?
One of the products of all the summer seasons and lockdowns has meant Scott Morrison spent a lot of time isolated from the public. So it's unsurprising that as soon as he got a chance, he was out in April visiting the Albanese, and he's been doing that himself for most of this year. Hugh?
It was pretty extraordinary because it was only back in 2019 that Scott Morrison was absolutely smashing
Well,
Labor's.
how's the war?
It was a boring weekend, that's right. Labor wanted to end the weekend because of its sort of ambitious electric vehicle policy. So imagine if you're Bush watching Scott Morrison now promoting the use of electric vehicles, inspecting electric vehicles on the TV, quite a conversion really.
Prime Minister also has to say he's previously saved seats because they're facing a threat from heating the bill.
If you are an old government on the seeking re-election after the fourth time, and also one that's gone through almost like a Doctor Who style reinvention through different leaders, you need a lot of work being done.
No matter how frustrated people might be, that is never the answer. Of course, there are many people who are feeling frustrated. Over the last couple of years, governments have been telling Australians what to do.
So while the PM's out on the road, it coincides with a time where there are these massive, angry, violent protests. And he's asked his thoughts on it, asked him to condemn the death threats and violence. I guess it's not just a hot water because on the one hand he said, frustrations about vaccine mandates, about restrictions, no excuse for violence. But in the same breath, he said, but I understand why people are frustrated at ongoing government restrictions.
The Prime Minister's outright accused of merchants to people on his right flank who he hopes he might benefit from. They cast preferences because it's much appealing to some of the left with the climate policies. He knows that he needs to keep the mindset as well.
It's shaping up to be a fiery final sitting fortnight of Parliament. It returns today for its final sessions for the year.
Australians are looking forward. Looking forward to Christmas. Looking forward to 2022.
Australia is reopening to the world.
Folks have come a long way from Fortress Australia. There was long thought rumour that the border wouldn't open after the election. We're starting to see another step, as I like to say, towards students and skilled workers.
Overseas students are one of the giants in the Australian economy, so there's been a lot of pressure on the federal government to ensure that at least overseas students and the migrant workers can come in. What's interesting though, running parallel with the debate today, is the fact that the Prime Minister is facing a whole lot of nationals who are opposing state vaccine mandates. But today we've got a national vaccine mandate. You can only come in if you're fully vaccinated. It just shows you that the politics of vaccines runs both ways.
Two senators threatening to go rogue. Two renegade Liberal senators have threatened to withhold support for government legislation and protest around vaccine mandates.
It's a time-honoured tradition in the Liberal and National parties that we allow our MPs to cross the floor without being tossed out. Five government senators crossing the floor.
And voted in support of One Nation.
Colleagues in the National Party don't want to see a free Australia.
Politicians should not be holding people to ransom.
It's cold bean. You wouldn't believe it. Goddamn bloody adult.
The government opposed the bill that was in the Senate today.
Given the numbers in the Parliament are as tight as they are, anyone can essentially derail the government's plans. And that's the issue that Scott Morrison has to contend with when it comes back to Parliament. You don't have everyone heading in one direction. He's got all these threats from all over the place looking to drag him in a different direction.
Yeah, I don't think some MPs are simply looking at their own political survival rather than the government. But the fact is that some MPs, in doing what they've done, like Richard Archer, might have actually improved both her political prospects and the government's.
But backbencher Richard Archer across the floor to vote for Labor and the prospect.
Coalition backbencher vote in defiance of the government.
I don't take this decision lightly at all, and it's a difficult decision to make.
The government briefly losing control of the House of Representatives.
With government lost Bill 1 by 2 votes in the House of Representatives over the issue of a federal anti-corruption body.
Clearly a lot pretty good. I might have done more once.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not confused. What clearly has happened is that we need to get on with the debate.
Failed on a technicality.
This government does not wish to instigate a federal integrity petition. The irony of breaking an election promise on integrity is certainly not lost on me, and sure as heck, I don't think it'll be lost on the voters either.
Hasn't the Prime Minister lost control of the House, lost control of his senators, and lost control of his government?
No. It's busy. We've got the ministers coming out, the Prime Minister's behind us. It was meant to be a day in which he unveiled religious discrimination laws. Instead, talking about beauty and culture.
Yeah, and largely because of margin. And with the very margins of Tasmania. And she decided here across the floor, really to put a stake on the ground for this National Security Commission federal anti-corruption. She reckons should be a high priority for that religious discrimination bill. Right? I think in doing so, across the floor, yes, it's added to what's already a very chaotic week in Canberra for the government. Floor crossing happening everywhere. But she's done a few things, I reckon. She's shown that for her electorate, she's real skin in the game here trying to...
The most marginal Christian politician.
Exactly. This matters to the people she's trying to win over. It's not something esoteric. Now, the spinners in this building might say, oh, this is something for the bubble. It's not. It matters. This National Integrity Commission. She's put a big highlight on that. And she's also managed to prove that a majority of the House actually wanted this debate back to the House.
It's not often we see the Prime Minister come in and introduce legislation, which is the way the day starts. We've just seen him leave. What do you think he's thinking now at the end of this parliamentary day and this week? Where is he going?
About this week, we've had 7 so far, all time. But across the floor this week, the government backlash on various issues. He had his own goal at the start. So he'll be quiet truth, but see if he's got a take over the summer. May or March election. A lot of his goals. One of them, I'm sure, is a quiet truth. The sense of this election.
Parliament is inherently about power. We heard that power imbalances and the misuse of power is one of the primary drivers of bullying, sexual harassment, and sexual assault.
The statistics that are presented there are more supporting and disturbing. I wish I could be more surprised.
It's deeply disappointing that if anyone arrives here with a smile, only to become disillusioned because of the treatment they experience by others.
So this has disrupt is the Sex Discrimination Commission HS's review into the parliamentary workplace culture, and it's an interesting time for it to be dropped in this last week of the year because it's kind of a whole circle to 2021. Started with Brett Higgins' couple of allegations from a couple of years ago, and that has really quite dominated parliamentary debate this year. Brett Higgins herself has said that she is really pleased to see this review come out, but she's hoping that all the recommendations are adopted.
It's cool. The new Omicron strain of COVID strain sweeps the globe to reopen most of the country in the lead up to Christmas. Have been thrown into doubt this morning.
Travel bans have been reintroduced.
Australia is one of the best prepared countries. We have always assumed that there will continue to be variations. It's amazing how, as we rush towards getting away from the pandemic, you see within the course of a week a reminder of we are still living with this virus. That 1 week the Prime Minister is saying the borders are reopening more. Within a week we're banning some countries from coming in because there is a new variant.
Yeah, he wants us to both respect a line which says we want the government to get out of our lives, but then on the uncertainties, he knows that the requirement might be more government intervention. But it also goes to fundamentally what Scott Morrison wants the next election to be about. He wants it to be about who can be trusted in uncertain times.
Because the pandemic has given the premiers, the prime minister, so much confidence to Australians going through labelling is. And he's continuing his strategy, which according to the polls is really working for him. A small target. He's not hitting the coalition got it right scare campaign.
Some of the Labor teams, they view themselves as being like Stephen Ray, and they just hope they can stay on their stance and go across the line. The government essentially taking itself out. Is that an election?
In June last year, while commenting on the COVID-19 pandemic,
In that last week of the campaign, it might be that those voters who haven't taken any notice of politics in the previous 3 years will look at Scott Morrison and think they particularly like him. But then they might look at Anthony Albanese and say, I don't know that
Okay, I think that's posed a very interesting insight into where our politics is. I think the coalition really are on the ropes, and I think that they're scared. Um, and even the ABC is having to have moments of acknowledging this. Um, I have so much more confidence in this week than most other uh, weeks in talking about what happens. Um, so I'm not sure if many people are able to. I was able to pull it up on my phone fine, but turns out it's not going as well as what I'd like. Okay. Was hoping that there would have been more to it than that, but it's not. Okay, I need to move to the next part of this. Uh, okay. So, oh, whoopsie. Okay, so it's not looking great. It's looking like they want to change it for Dutton. But, I mean, even if you take the approach of trying to do that, Dutton is not very popular at all. It's not going to go down well. So I've got a concern that in doing it, that it's politically advantageous right now because Dutton is not considered very politically savvy. He's more considered a little bit of a lot of a bully. There was even a headline of him saying, um, I'm not a monster, from his wife. Of course, his wife is going to have a difference of opinion on what a monster actually constitutes, but you know, I largely do not think Peter Dutton is leadership material, and people are going to run for the hills from Mr. Dutton. However, uh, just one moment. Okay. Whew. Looks like we might be having a few technical glitches tonight. Um. Okay. So, next part I want to touch on is seriously, even if we have a look at the federal parliament rose because I think they've shut down for the year now. Federal Parliament rose after a week in which it officially reported that the economy had once again contracted due to lockdowns. And but it wasn't just that; they were already in trouble long before that. That rhetoric that they've got, that it was all hunky dory before lockdowns and everything, massive lie. They aren't great economic managers, and they never will be. You can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still going to be a pig. And this government has done nothing but have had its face in the trough in amongst all of it. Um, I just want it clear that we know that this government isn't just bad on one level, it's rotten to its absolute core. It doesn't have any fundamental values that you can walk away through this election cycle and then go, no, 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 they're definitely going to get Labor on this, that, or the other. Because that's so grotesquely yuck. There isn't anything in this positioning that they've taken that I can see that they're going to get anywhere positive. The fact that stroll out the term became popular to describe the government's apparently relaxed. It's not a race approach to getting the population vaccinated. That was one of the most egregious things that you could do to a public. There is this public that's all in lockdown, and there's hope of a vaccine to a little bit of freedom, and everyone was like, yay, maybe, a vaccine was our way out. And we kept hearing about it, and the US was doing it, and we could hear their right wing supercharging into this stupidity of, well, you can't make me take it. And I'm like, no, dude, you already need to. This is why are we debating it like this? You're being dishonest. From birth to 5, you need a certain amount of vaccines to attend any school, and that's just how it is. There is already mandates in place. And no, this is the largest trial of a vaccine ever in the world. In fact, it's so big that over 3 billion people, as of a few days ago, had already gotten the vaccine. So if you have any concerns, talk to your doctor. There are people that will not be able to get it, and due to medical conditions, that's real. But this politically advantageous thing that the Prime Minister thought he could walk with his people wasn't just a poor idea. It had poor structure, poor being. We just didn't need it. And to be honest, I'm shocked that he thought he was going to get away with that whole rhetoric of, hey, yeah, I can do this because I'm me. Absolutely not. So next I want to talk about some of the men. Now, if you're not upset about this, you're probably gonna be, because I don't know how many of you have had the moment to see how badly some of these men have behaved in Parliament. Now, I'm not saying that this is very deliberate. It's cruel, it's horrible, and they've known for a long time that they got a women issue in the Conservative ranks, and I think that they got some major problems. But that's not all. They're going to experience some major issues in trying to maintain the female vote. Want an example? I'll give you an example. So here's where we're at. Watch this, because this is Brad Hazzard, the Health Minister of New South Wales.
Someone just said Danuta can ask a question, but that wasn't me, Danuta. Okay, Danuta.
Thank you so much. So, Minister, while I was talking about regional health, and the one that you were questioning, why is that?
I'll talk about it today, Danuta. That's what I did now. Go out and say something to them, so I'll just go with the flow.
So, in terms of today's cases, we've had 207 now as a result of Omicron and the renewed.
There are a stack of people here all just clapping and cheering at all your continuing questions. One more. So make it good.
Alright, so the questions we've seen a huge increase in alcohol. Just really quickly,
Hang on. It's broad acclamation from all media up here that you've had enough. One more, and that's it, Danuta.
thank you. So we know that a target close to coming to some, possibly on vaccinations from 5 to 11. Have you heard anything about that? Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thanks, Danuta. See ya. Anybody want to give a round of applause for Danuta? No, there was nobody. Sorry, Danuta. Bye. Oh,
Okay. That's a sign that Craig Kelly isn't just not Craig Kelly, Brad Hazard is more than just out of touch. He's definitely out of line even with his own party. I would like to really reiterate that this isn't even normal for them. Even in political circles, they need to show a little bit more of a friendliness stuff. Like these press hearings, so many people are watching them because they're concerned that about the COVID issue. So they're definitely paying attention. And I have no idea why it's ending like that with these sorts of people. But it gets worse. Just when you think that his appalling behaviour was just a one off. Listen to how we spoke to Jodie McKay when she was the opposition leader of New South Wales.
Do we or don't we have enough face masks?
she's a goose. Don't worry about it. I heard the leader of the opposition, the temporary leader of the opposition, actually being a complete pork chop out there today. Quite stupid. So you've got to say, oh, the cakes weren't quite right, or this wasn't quite right. Quite stupid.
Seat for the moment.
We should all wait with bated breath for you to leave and somebody else to come along.
The question is, do we or don't we have enough face masks?
You certainly need one. Just be quiet, seriously. For heaven's sakes. You wouldn't fit into... Anyway, no, it'd be nice. When I was a teacher many years ago, there were a couple of kids in the class like you, and normally they went down to 6 pretty quickly because that's what you should be carrying on like that. That's just stupid. If I was sitting next to someone like you in the bus, I would definitely have a mask on. You are as irrelevant as you will ever be.
I will.
Seriously, you are clearly irrelevant. Very frustrating and very annoying.
Minister for Health, you can also be that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here's a health minister. I would ask that he stop attacking me over the table and just answer the question.
Yeah, see, this women problem that these liberals have is repugnant. It's not just a little bit of, oh, you look a little bit bad. This is awful all round. I truly think that we're in some of the worst of the worst with these lot. I have never felt so ashamed watching these men speak to these women so terribly. But I mean, this is par for the course. This is just what they do. But I'm not done yet. Okay. We have another mail. I don't know if you're all caught up on the whole Peter Van Onslow wants to sue a person on Twitter. Not just him, there's a couple of other people that want to get involved in on this. Apparently he's trying to claim the whole cancer culture thing, and he feels like he's the victim in every scenario, so you can't ever say that he's done anything wrong. His tweet is simply this: the whole strategy that they're trying to deploy to silence me. So, no, I won't ever be silenced. I was defamed. I'm the victim. I will speak out about this forever. Dude, you're a victim as much as you want to be. In this case, if he wants to go running around and pretending like he's the victim in everything, cool, buddy, but it doesn't work. Geez, that's a really aggressive banner. Okay. So Peter Van Onselen is joined by Christian Porter, who also has he's resigning. He won't be standing for a re-election of his allegations of. I'll say the word YouTube has certain terms and conditions about what can stay up. This time with the support of fellow politician Andrew Lemming, the upskirter, and journalist Peter Van Onselen, the former attorney of Christian Porter's defamation lawyer, delivered 3 notices in one email to Advocate for Businesses, Advocate and Business Professor Gemma Carey, over comments that she made a post containing a photograph of him. Off the back of the defamation action against the national broadcaster, which in turn led to his removal from the front bench, Mr. Porter resumed his pursuit of shutting down criticisms against him, this time by targeting a child abuse survivor and Professor Gemma Carey over public comments she made last month. Because, 3 men that are grotesque should be attacking women. That just seems totally appropriate. And, Peter Van Onselen has had a really difficult time disattaching himself from the whole Porter and allegations and defending them. And let's be absolutely clear about this. This isn't like a normal allegation stem. There was a lot of covering up done. There was police that wouldn't look into it, obstructing a lot of this stuff. A lot of people didn't seem interested. Later on, one victim, from what I recall, did commit suicide, using the same lawyer from his attempt to sue the ABC, because that worked out so stellarly not. The journalist Louise Milligan over an article that never named him, but allegedly hinted him in a report of federal minister accused of which he strenuously denies. Mr. Porter directed Rebecca Giles to issue the 3 notices to Professor Carey, because there's such a tweet. This is why they want to control social media. Any sense that they get their slight fees hurt, this is where we're at. I really, really want to make it clear that this behavior is not appropriate. It's grotesque to say the least, these sorts of people. And this isn't like 1 or 2 things that they do. This is like an ongoing saga. It's like race to the bottom for these politicians. But yeah, in a series of tweets, Miss Tame explained that she had been called a whore, a homewrecker, a liar, and scum repeatedly, and that while it was, to be fair of her to respond to legal action, I know what it's like to be threatened. She also knows what it's like to use negativity to convey a regrettable action. That's what I fear has been lost, a collective sense of proportion and fairness. Today we live in a culture where voicing constructive concerns about amplifying unknown is called cancelling, while the offensive comment on the photo was met with multiple defamation threats. I mean, I think Grace Tame really, really eyed it off perfectly. She's pointing out the hypocrisy of or she points out someone did something to her and everyone threatens her. But one person calls these people to account and they're like, no, 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 we have to sue. We have to win. And it's utterly repugnant to its core. According to the page, all the funds downloaded are donated to Professor Kerry will be used to provide legal assistance. Any money is not used will be donated to the Let Her Speak campaign. So she definitely is going to need support. I have a lot of problems with how these people are treated. Women in the Liberal Party and in the wider public aren't treated well at all. I have no idea why this behavior is considered acceptable. I think what makes this so interesting is that what real level of coverage have you seen on it? Forget whatever you think you know about this sort of thing, and how it affects you. What real world media coverage do you see that holds these men accountable? I mean, take a look at the allegations of Andrew Lemming. He upskirted women. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's literally taking a camera, pointing it up that woman's skirt, and click. Yeah, he literally did that. Really, he got away with it. While the poor woman gets, all the hate in the world, it's grotesque in its whole nature. But it all circles back to the view of Brad Hazard and that view that this is a totally acceptable approach. And it's just not. These men behave on a repugnant level. If you remember, Scott Morrison was a leader of what they call the swinging dicks. That's real. They really invented a group where they called themselves that name. Now, I'm super uncomfortable even saying that that's the name that they came up with. I don't know how they had this like little high school giggly. We called ourselves this. And it really showed the culture of the Liberal Party and the people around them, in this sense of the moment you would say, hey, that's probably not appropriate. They're like, cancel culture. No, dude, they're holding you to account. That's basically where we're at. So if you don't know that, you're not watching closely. These people are grifters and they will repeatedly make sure that you are gaslighted into the idea that you're the issue. And how could they possibly be the issue? I think the most appalling thing that I noticed about all of this is that it's treated as if no one can actually touch them for what they've done. Like, no one can actually get around and talk about this freely. The ABC tried to talk about what Christian Porter had done. It's like, no, I'm suing. Take a look at John Barilaro. He was exposed for a hell of a lot of corruption by friendly Geordies. What's the first thing that they did? Well, I'm suing. Anytime anyone does anything of an honest nature that holds this government to account, sadly, is not treated real good. Look, I want to tell you that this isn't so systemic, but it really is. And it's one of those things where we're going to be dealing in this culture for a long, long time. So we have to vote it out. There's no other way around it, they can't even stick to a basic narrative about mask mandates and lockdowns and vaccinations. That alone shouldn't get them another election. Their treatment of women is appalling. Their policy background is everything grifted from the ALP, just slightly worse, way worse versions of that. The EV cars should have been enough to shut Scott Morrison down and said, no, 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 you said that these things were going to ruin the weekend. So either you're lying then or you're lying now. That instantly should absolve him of any leadership role that he thinks that he's entitled to. But I digress. That's a whole nother thing. These people never ever seem to have accountability on any level. 1 second. Every time we appear to see accountability, it's thwarted by them saying, no, no, I'm suing. So, look, I know Parliament has wrapped up for the last 2 weeks for the year. But I need you to remember the work of government needs to continue, and they will be highly electioneering this cycle. Do not fall for the antics that they do, and their antics horrible. Just FYI, they're not standard antics; they're awful. Just so you're clear on just how horrible their antics are. They will lie to you about basic policies. They will tell you that they said something 1 week, and then the next they will tell you that no, you didn't, even though you've got it on video. They will change AEC signs, the Electoral Commission signs, to make it look like you should be voting for them. They will do deals with the Greens that hopefully won't work this time. Hopefully the Greens have woken up to themselves and won't do those dodgy deals. But I don't know. We're going to have to see what's going to work, you know. Are we going to fall for it again? We're a smart nation, and I keep reiterating that. Our media can only play distraction for so long before everyone sort of goes, hey, that looks a bit dodgy. I better not be doing that. So there's more to it than that. I want you to watch this. This is where our next story. This is how I think we're really, really going to see the Labor team. Check out this speech. I think that this is going to be very, very interesting. God, the interface on this is insanely difficult. Listen to the maiden speeches of what they. I don't think it was this video I was meant to show. What was the? I had a reason. Hold on. This is the video I've got. I got it wrong. Okay.
Josh Frydenberg said this morning, Labor never models on cost their policy. Went au contraire. I mean, he said that before he saw the document. And Scott Morrison said this policy will put electricity prices up. Before, he must have.
So you can hear that? Yep. Just checking.
Where a modelling shows it puts electricity prices down. These guys are liars, and they'll continue to lie. We're up for a good, strong debate about Australia's future.
I haven't
posted much on Facebook since our time, but given where we are in the electoral cycle and the need for every voice in the community standing up against this underground government, I think it's time everyone who can speaks out against Morrison and this declining, terrible government. We need to concentrate, I think, from lead up to the election, building a good society, building a decent society, making sure that working people can put food on the table, that people who can't find work get looked after. We need a new social contract, and we won't have a new social contract unless there's a change of government. And I know people are complaining about the Labour Party, but I must say, having known Albo for decades, he will be a great Prime Minister. He understands working people, he knows what it's like to do it. And we need that social contract. And it's only a Labour Party with a leader like Albo that will give us that new social contract. So let's get out there, let's get our voices out saying that we've had enough of the corruption, we've had enough of the lies, we've had enough of a Prime Minister who only cares about himself, who only cares about who only cares about ensuring that the people that back him get support and everyone else can please themselves. So let's see where we go in the next few weeks. I'm happy to post on a fairly regular basis and keep raising the issues of building a good society, getting a new social contract, getting rid of the Morrison government, dealing with global warming, dealing with the wars and the corruption, and make sure that we have a society that is fair, is equitable, and is fit for purpose, and make sure that we get a government that deals with the big issues facing working people.
Okay. I think that definitely showed a narrative that we're building to. I think it's quite clear that we're at a point now as we take a listen to Richard Marles where we're at. As Parliament is has just closed, I think it's important to gauge each and every moment with these people that I would love to see in government. So I want to build this narrative that you openly see that I think this can go really, really well in our favor. So, for some reason on Facebook it doesn't show that I'm sharing my screen, but on YouTube it does for some reason. Oh, there we go.
Last week of the city.
Hold on.
Well, we begin the last week of the sitting calendar, and the government is in a complete mess. Last week we saw a number of government senators cross the floor on the question of.
I'm not sure if I told you this is Richard Marles. He's part of Labor's team, and I think that this is going to be part of the government. I want you guys to get an understanding of where we're at with them. I'm very positive that this will be our best choice that we've ever made. You want to talk fiscal responsibility, but good social constructs. The Labor Party seems to be the only party that has that. That have only ever had that. If you have a look at all their financial, the way that they've dealt in their financial years of governance, every time the Liberals have left this massive debt and they've ballooned everything out and sold off a whole bunch of things that creates less revenue for an incoming government. But I'm going to rewind this because I wanted you to focus in on Richard Marles totally. But I want you to understand that this is such a serious thing. Um, I can show year after year after year of a Labor government. Not only do they create more jobs and they create a better equitable system, not in terms of just Medicare and education, but actual real jobs. My brother once said to me, the more cranes you see in the air, the more that you can tell that we have a leftist government because they build more. They're more about constructing this community around you, and uh, that's one of my brothers. He's a very leftist. Well, he was at the time, and he'd talk about those sorts of things. Anyway, I digress. We'll get back to Richard Miles.
Well, we begin the last week of the sitting calendar, and the government is in a complete mess. Last week we saw a number of government senators cross the floor on the question of public health measures being implemented by the states. We saw the government split on the question of the religious discrimination bill. We saw a government member cross the floor in the House of Representatives over a debate around establishing a federal anti-corruption body. The government lost 2 votes on the House of Representatives floor last week. The Liberals hate the Nationals hate each other. The government is in a fight with itself on just about everything. It is a shambles, and little wonder, because Scott Morrison's own colleagues have stopped taking his voice and his word seriously. And while this is all happening, we are seeing Middle Australia being increasingly placed under pressure. Income and average households over the course of this year have declined in real terms by $700. Over that same period, petrol prices have increased by $900. In my hometown of Geelong, the rents have increased by $2,000. Middle Australia is being squeezed, and people are looking to a government to show character, to show leadership, to provide answers in this really difficult moment. And instead, all they've got is Scott Morrison and his government, which is a complete rubbish.
Can I just indicate that we would
Okay. So I think it's quite clear where we're at. We're at this really, really, really toxic moment of government. And they've had so long in government and entrenched themselves in many forms of corruption. It's impossible to think of how we dig ourselves out of this awfulness. I think it's fundamental that I I really, really want to make it clear that we should have had a change of government 2 election cycles ago. Um, and the damage to our climate, to our economy, to our social welfare system is very evident. Um, Wait a minute, was that happening? Because just let me test something when I share the screen. Just bear with me a moment, and then I think what was we will see if I'm the idiot in this case. Because if I'm the idiot, you get to call me an idiot. Okay.
normally be finished this part of the day, but we've had 45 minutes of hearing about what it's like in this building. The stench of a place. It's like swimming in a sewer. And the king of the sewer rats is Mr. Morrison, leading them along a path. Deception. What a way to end the year. What a way to close out this year. Another year of scandals. Another year of jobs for the mates. Press releases with no policy. Rorts, botched vaccine rollouts, backflips, and lies after lies. And they delivered the same performance again at question time. The government of Liberal and National members and senators had 2 major jobs this year. They needed to establish proper quarantine and they needed to roll out the vaccine. They still have not established proper quarantine, and people are facing Christmas going, are we going to be okay? And they're worried because the government hasn't done its job, and they should be worried because this government has not done its job and it does not deserve to be re-elected.
They had to roll out a vaccine. Instead, we got to stroll out and, oops, I forgot to order. That's the quality of the government. They need to be kicked out. Even the cabinet have just been as hapless. Government have had an NDIS minister constantly undermine the scheme, call it welfare for life. That's what they call it. The government have had an industry minister at war with Australia's car industry and allegedly with her own staff. The government has a communication minister more interested in attacking online critics of the government than building the NBN, the fix of the whole piece of infrastructure that they totally stuffed up across the country. And of course, we haven't seen any legislation to establish a federal integrity commission. And you can see why in their answers to questions today, the debate that has ensued since question time finished, and this litany of failures of a corrupt and incompetent government. It's been a significant year for the Liberals and National Party to hide their dirty deeds behind public interest immunity claims, hiding the dirty deals that they do, saying it's not in the public interest to put it out for critique, for the Senate to overlook it. They've blacked out FOI requests. They've constantly rorted government funds using taxpayers' dollars as their own personal re-election fund. When it comes to accountability, it's only ever silent night for those opposite. In these historic times, the government's fallen far short of the ambition that the moment requires. This is a listless, drifting government. It has no integrity and no vision. It's a government that's been characterised throughout all of 2021 and the years that preceded it, the long 7 years before we had to watch this shameless display. It's completely and totally let down the women of Australia. Mr. Morrison and his cabinet have fallen short of even my ever diminishing expectations of what they might be able to do. When it comes to the treatment of women in this place and outside, they have abjectly failed 50% of the population. They do not deserve another term. They deserve to be kicked out. Mr. Morrison's failure to meet the moment, his pettifogging, his refusal to hold his own ministers accountable are a shame on this entire place. And I only hope that the women of Australia remember how those opposite, the Liberal and National Party members here, have let them down at every opportunity. Here are the 12 days of Scott Morrison's Christmas for the Australian people. 12 jobs for his mates. 11 months of policy and action. 10 days of sitting until next August. 9 glossy blue brochures. 8 sitting days of chaos. 7 vaccine targets missed. 6 car parks cancelled. 5 backflips at least. 4 ministerial resignations. 3 fewer senators to count on in this chamber. Too many lies. 1 big botched rollout. Australia, that's your Christmas present from Mr. Morrison. He's no Santa. Instead of good governance, we've had 0 integrity commissions, 0 women's budget statements, 0 action on housing affordability, and 0 accountability from those opposite. It's been a year of power without glory. Do not give them the chance to continue next year in the same way.
Okay. Oh, well, I don't know what's going on there. Okay. Alrighty. I think it's quite clear that the government isn't in any position to govern anymore. We do not have a government that seems interested in doing anything that is remotely productive for you or anyone else. I think the issue that we are left with now is how do we keep making sure that the public is largely aware of what they're left with. This isn't like there's plenty of time to wait to let people come to their own conclusions. We've had 4 election cycles, well, almost 4 election cycles, where we can say, hey, yeah, they've really, really messed this stuff up. And if the media had been honest from the get go, I don't think they would have gotten one term, let alone three more after this. It's appalling to say the least, and we should be very, very embarrassed at what this is. But I mean, I think this year we've had a government that wasn't willing to govern. There was a pandemic, and it absolutely smashed things. Do not think that this pandemic did not absolutely smash our nation. It didn't just have death and sickness. It had an economy that just it struggled to hold itself up. It had families stealing in homeschooling. It had uh, people that had no business in homeschooling doing it. It had people not able to work. And I would like to see the divorce rate after this, after everyone spent a lot more time together. I think that census data is already going to be pretty bad. A divorce rate was already quite high because, in my opinion, and it's purely my opinion, I believe that divorce rates are higher now because the economy doesn't allow for two people um, to be comfortable in a home and raise a family. They seem so concerned with what women do with their bodies, but they're not willing to pay for these women to be free to do whatever they want with them. Um, there's massive disincentives to having children. For instance, for you to have a child, you need to earn a certain amount of money. And that certain amount of money needs to be able to cover the cost of having a child. Children were already expensive. But if you wanted to, say, return to work in that process, you would have a moment of needing daycare and needing help to get this child through these bigger parts of life. You'd need a great education system, which is constantly defunded underneath the Conservatives. They always pretend like they don't do it, and then they make it sound like what they will do is in their first year, they'll rip a lot of money away, but then they'll top it back up and then they'll call it record funding because that's the biggest they've ever funded it. So that's how they get away with doing it. And they do this with not just education, but Medicare. So there's a lot of disincentives for people to have children. Labor do have a policy to combat that. They do have a daycare policy. They also talk about dealing in climate change as well, bringing emissions down to the 40% mark by 2030. They talk about investing in cleaner energies and dealing in electric vehicles so they're more efficient and cheaper overall. And this will be by making it more affordable for the public. This will make it better for not just the environment but the family. This will bring costs significantly down. So do remember, having a Labor government does have a lot of benefits, not just in raising your family and in an environment level, but even on like a world platform level. We gain more respect in having a more climate friendly government and more knowledgeable government, one that doesn't just bring a pamphlet to the table kind of thing. And I think that that's the issue that we're surrounded in, is that this is one of those parts where government hasn't governed in a very, very long time. They will bring you a nice glossy brochure, but as for any real policy, well, sorry, no. They're too interested in introducing their bigger bill, which would largely discriminate against women and children. I mean, how is that an election winning strategy? No, 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 really. I want to introduce something where my main attack grab is women and children. Congrats, idiots. That's like that even your own party was like, no, 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 no. I don't think you quite thought this policy idea through. So let's look at why you said it. Well, there's many reasons why conservative governments say something silly like that. One, because they feel like their evangelical base is the biggest thing that they need to maintain. And by and large, do not underestimate the evangelical base. It's large and it's got this really, really enveloping thing. So if they get one little bit of help from the evangelical base, they tell all the churches, hey, you better vote conservative. They're about to make this thing where you can say awful things to women and children about their identity or about their choices in what they do with their bodies. Now, even amongst liberal ranks, to see them cross the floor and say, no, 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 you shouldn't pass this. This didn't quite have the brakes on it that Scott Morrison should have had. He was still like gun-hoing this thing. I'm sure he wanted to go to his magical Hillsong convention and say, hey, I did a good thing because we passed same-sex marriage. And this has been like some big revenge thing. And then you had that Israel Folau stoush. I talked about it last week, where Israel was saying awful things. And when he got called out for it, he's like, well, can't you make it so I can say horrible things? That was really his basic excuse. But he can have tattoos on him based upon this so-called religious belief that he has. He can get as many tattoos that he wants, even though it says that he shouldn't. But he wants to use that same book to attack women and children. That's an important takeaway. Do not be fooled into the idea that we are in a normal moment of a political cycle. This government is definitely on the nose and on the ropes, because if you weren't sure, take a look at some of the video clips that I've uploaded earlier in the program, and you'll get an understanding of just how on the nose this government is. But to make it really clear, we have a choice this time about not just about the government we want, but about what we want in terms of the next step, how we want our society to feel, look, and act like. We're not just electing a new government, we're essentially telling that bigger bill, you have no place in our society. And we do believe in climate change. And daycare shouldn't be that expensive. Oh, and the price of fuel is insanely high. So we should have an electric car policy that works for everyone. These are things that I think fundamentally are going to be big. But just so you understand that this is something that I think all of us are feeling the constraints of what this conservative government have done, which is what I played earlier, some of the bigger constraints in terms of how we conduct ourselves. What real policy have they got? They tried to steal the electric vehicle policy, which you go back to 2019 and you can clearly hear Scott Morrison in his contemptuous voice saying, that'll never work, it'll ruin the weekend. I think that's a telling moment. And he told on himself that verbal leakage that you could see him have in having that very real discussion was uncomfortable. But not just uncomfortable for you and me. It was uncomfortable for his own party. They had to sit back and evaluate where that fitted into their narrative. But it did, I mean, for Barnaby Joyce, this was a perfect narrative. If you're like one of the real yuck guys in this government, and I mean, they're super gross. The way that they talk to women, the way that they behave, it's just icky, you know. Um, I'm sure that there's many other better terms to equate that to, but ickiness seems to fit the best for me. Um, we are in an interesting dynamic of politics. We should have a better system of governance that works for everyone. Right now, leave in the chat area if you believe wholeheartedly this government is working for you. Um, and I really, really do want to hear from you guys. I like seeing your comments appear here so I can put them up on the screen so you can get an idea of just where we're at. Um, I know that these lives do take a bit of time, and I think that over time we can build on that. I said to the kids, you know, we're doing this because we've run out of time for them. I'm doing this essentially to save their world. I can't survive underneath this conservative government. And I think that that's something that it's important to note. I can't survive under them. How are you doing? And are you telling people that you're not coping with it either? That narrative needs to be built. And that conversation needs to be had. It shouldn't be taboo anymore to tell people, hey, you know, we're doing it pretty tough. And if we didn't have the Conservatives, it wouldn't be this difficult. It shouldn't be considered taboo anymore to tell your parents or someone around you that you know that's largely conservative. My parents are leftists, so I'm pretty good. Well, on one side. It shouldn't be controversial to say, hey, you know, this bigger bill that they're trying to pass, if they're religious, you should be able to say, hey, if your church is endorsing this, this is the most anti freedom that you can possibly imagine. This heavily restricts what is a secular nation. All of these things build to a narrative of a very, very, very unhealthy, unstable government that isn't there for you. But I think it's worse than that. It's more pervasive than that. We're at a point where even the simplest things are gone. All the norms of saying, hey, being awful to wanting the right to be awful to one of the LGBTIQ community members is an awful idea. How could you win an election based upon that? Well, now I think that this is the fiery moment of the Trump era that you can actively see Trump's participation in disinformation and the evangelical push. The evangelicals, by and large, were heavily conservative, but and they'd been promised for years judges and awful things in the US. But to see it to be brought to this US style of political angling of never apologizing, don't be honest about anything, and hey, while you're at it, be as religious, crazy as you can be. Now, there's nothing wrong with religion. If you can pray to whoever you need to pray, but if you're supporting a bill that actively suppresses free speech, like actively will spend time in suppressing free speech, I can guarantee you this will end badly. Um, I think that the moment that we're looking at right now, that this bigger bill is the most dangerous thing. I know Liberal senators and independents and Labor have crossed. But if you give these guys another term, that's essentially saying, hey, I want to have that bill passed. So, and you're essentially telling the climate that you don't care and uh, you don't care about everyday costs either. There's a lot of things that burden people right now. And I thought that the vaccine rollout wasn't just a travesty. It significantly damaged the economy and our talk around vaccines. It allowed a US style politicizing of it permeating into the public, which was not just dangerous, it was outright uh, murderous. Um, keep in mind that real people die through disinformation. And no, this isn't like one of those things where you hear one of the US senators say things like, so many people died of this every year, and they didn't shut down. So, if you want to know who said that, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know how she ever got elected, but she really, really said 60,000 people died in a year of cancer. It's tragic. Um, many Americans died due to poor health care. But how she got to this mental gymnastics of talking about something that is not contagious to something that is a deadly disease like cancer, um, they're worlds apart. We have a pandemic that is killing 800,000 Americans, and they're heading into winter now. It's gonna get worse. And she thought she'd bring up 60,000 people. Honey, had you seen that at all? Did you just happen to come across the Marjorie Taylor Greene moment of suggesting that's what you should say? Yeah, look, I'm no, I'm not going to griff like Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro and all of those awful people. I think that the policy that uh, a leftist government has is solid, and those grifters telling you about whether vaccines are tested or not tested, it has gone through 3 billion people. Trust me, it's tested. I've had it. Everyone in my home has had it. And I've even taken extended family and my children's roommates. So do not think that I'm one of those people that actively walks around and says, hey, do this thing. No. And the reason I don't just tell you to do a thing, I actively want you to get vaccinated. And I think that it's more important than ever. Now, I understand that the Omicron virus strain of the virus is looking like it's less transmissible. That's an important factor. No, it's more transmissible, apologies, but you don't get as sick. So far, we're only a couple of weeks into this. There's going to be a lot more that's learned. But I think that the still takeaway point from the World Health Organization, which is very reputable, still suggests vaccines is the best way to go about this to reopening countries. Actually, believe it or not, had we been playing nice with China and ended up with their vaccine, I don't know how many people heard this. This is amazing. They have a vaccine. you might hear the clinking of my keyboard a smidgen, but give me one sec. Their vaccine is quite phenomenal. I had learned about this hearing a doctor online talk about him. Now, if anyone knows me, they would have known. Not only did I forget his name, I forget how we discussed. I only remember some of the bigger talking points, but I remember being quite intrigued by it all. It was super interesting. Take a listen to this. Okay, what do we know about the Chinese vaccine? Okay, theirs is super effective. The Chinese vaccine produces Sinovac and Sinopharm have signed on to the global vaccine sharing scheme, which aims to distribute vaccines to poorer countries. The Global Alliance Vaccine and Immunization Gavi said it would make 110 million doses of the vaccine as part of the scheme. The COVAX agreement, which has manufactured over 11 vaccines, plans to provide 2 billion doses around the world by 2022. Now, the only way out of this pandemic is this vaccine. So, all you idiots taking a part in any anti vaccine movement, remember the only way out is vaccine. Both Sinopharm and Sinovac, which have been approved by the World Health Organization for emergency use, are already being used in China and dozens of countries around the world. It has, I think that it might be in this article, where it has 20 proton spikes. Now, compare that to the Pfizer vaccine, which has only, I think, 10. So it's more efficacy rate over the vaccine. They've actually got an incredible vaccine. Had we played nice with China a little bit, I think we could have got an even more awesome vaccine, which is phenomenally good for the world. I to watch what they've done is amazing, and it covers this protein spike covers the different variants. That's super important. But don't take my word for it. Take theirs. Beijing-based biopharmaceutical company Sinovac is behind the coronavirus vaccine. Works by using killed viral particles to expose the body's immune system to the virus without risking serious disease response. So most of these vaccines enter the pancreas. Now, the reason that it drops off so significantly over time is because the pancreas doesn't store that memory. It's a memory that is inside of that. And eventually that memory lapses inside the pancreas. So as we're learning all of this stuff, we know that you will need boosters as well. By comparison, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are mRNA, which means the genetic code is injected to the body, triggering the body to begin making viral proteins, not the whole virus, which is large enough to train the immune system to attack. So to know that China have this amazing vaccine, and if we played nice with them this good, we would have had access to this. CoronaVac is more traditional method of vaccine that is successfully used in many well-known vaccines like rabies. Professor Luo Dai of Nanyang Technical University told the BBC. On a paper in one of Sinovac's main advantages, it can be stored in a refrigerator up to 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, unlike the other two leading vaccines, Moderna and Pfizer. We have been led up this garden path and thinking only the US had this great. I mean, this is how our media does it. It brings you into this idea that only the US can fix things. But this is clearly not the case. I'm actively seeing that China has produced one of the best vaccines in the world. And here are we talking about it as if the US have saved our tails. Which, had we been more polite to the Chinese government and instead of, pandering to the US government to be mean to the Chinese, we would have been okay. And we do it to be politically advantageous too. We try to pretend like we're this big nation that can bully others. It's grotesque. On paper, Sinovac's main advantage that it can be held in 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. But the US one needs to be held in minus 70, from what I've seen. So it needs special fridges. Yep, minus 70 degrees. In contrast, needs to be, and the Moderna one needs to be at minus 20. It means that both Sinovac and the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine are a lot more useful to developing countries, and may have the ability to facilitate large stories. Okay, which vaccine has the global research? The AstraZeneca one has the has the biggest global reach. Pfizer the AstraZeneca one is 174 countries. Pfizer Biotech is 102. The Sinopharm, the Chinese one, is 64. Moderna is 52. The Sputnik V, if you don't know, that's the Russian one. The Sinovac one is Chinese again, and it goes on. The Sputnik one is 47. So they've managed to distribute that to 47 different countries. There's a lot of different vaccines. The WHO said that the study showed the Sinovac vaccines prevented symptomatic disease in 51% of those vaccinated and prevented severe COVID-19 and hospitalizations 100%. Dude, why were we playing nice with the US and not with China? We should have had access to this. We should have just stayed out of it and been Switzerland for a little while and went, okay, cool. You have your little weird battle to be politically advantageous. It added only few adults over the age of 60 were enrolled in clinical trials, so efficacy could not be estimated in that age group. According to a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine, showing results from Chile, Sinovac has an efficacy rate of 65.9% against the COVID-19 and 87.5% in preventing hospitalization and 86.3% in preventing death. Now that's pretty phenomenal. We should be impressed by that. The WHO approved the Sinopharm vaccine, which is produced by a Chinese state-owned company. Like Sinovac, it is an inactivated vaccine, which triggers the production of the antibodies that fight the coronavirus. The virus is killed before being injected into the people's bodies, so it can't transmit the COVID-19. The virus, at the time, WHO said the vaccine efficacy for symptomatic and hospitalized disease was 79% of all age groups combined. However, it added once again that there wasn't enough of over 60s enrolled in the clinical trials to estimate the efficacy of that age group and still recommends the vaccine for older people. That's China has administered more than 1 billion doses of the vaccine and to its residents, according to China's National Health Commission. And spread the spread of the coronavirus within China, for the most part, has been contained, and the country has largely opened up. More than 80 countries are using China's COVID vaccine, including many among the Asian Pacific nations of Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and the Philippines. However, some countries opted for the Chinese jabs have high vaccination rates are still seeing a surge in infection numbers. For instance, Chile reimposed a curfew and brought back restrictions on traveling in response to the Delta variant, which is more transmissible than previous variants. More than 70% of the Chileans are fully vaccinated with the Sinovac vaccine. There's Sicilians and Mongolia, meanwhile, recently recorded some of the highest increase per capita despite the small population. Both are relying heavily on Sinopharm. The vaccination programs are advanced. 68% of adults are fully vaccinated in the Seychelles, 55% in Mongolia. I would like to see those numbers higher. Thailand has changed the vaccine policy to mix China's Sinovac with the AstraZeneca vaccine in a bid to produce protection after hundreds of medical workers caught COVID-19 despite being fully vaccinated with Sinovac. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, the main doctors and nurses said at least 30 healthcare workers despite receiving 2 doses of the Sinovac. The country is now planning to switch to different COVID vaccines and administer booster shots in efficacy. So are the vaccines failing? The vaccines are not only a factor in what's going on in this country. One of the reasons that the efficacy of the vaccines might be a warning that they are not as effective against new variants. Pfizer recently said that it will seek authorization of the booster shots. In Indonesia, the main doctors association and said comorbidities may have played some part in the death rate of healthcare workers. The country has also extremely low vaccination rates, with just over 5% of its population receiving both doses. So as the vaccine rates increase, death decreases, and it just gets better and better. Professor Ben Cowling, head of epidemiology at the Biostatics University in Hong Kong, said despite having the modest efficacy against symptomatic COVID, both Sinovac and Sinopharm give very high levels of protection against severe disease. Okay, how do the variants affect vaccines? The Sinovac and Sinopharm studies, however, tested the efficacy against the viruses first found in the Chinese city of Wuhan. The new data has been published on how they fare against the variants. Based upon the studies trying to model the immune protection of the virus, Professor Cowling estimates the protection offered in inactivated virus vaccines against the Delta variant could be as much as 20% or lower compared to the original strain. His calculations suggest even larger reduction against the Beta variant in South Africa. Professor Jing, a virologist from the University of Hong Kong, told the BBC that it had expected the efficacy of the Chinese vaccine will go down against the variants, including Delta. While saying that they are great vaccines and people who do not have access to these vaccines should be receiving some soon, and everyone should receive their vaccine. Practice social distancing and wear a mask. Look, all of this stuff is super duper important. And here's why it's so important. We are in an unprecedented time. Do not be under the illusion that this is like a normal thing. We are not in a normal election cycle, and our Liberal government has pandered to the US one too many times. The policy needs to shift. I'm not saying that we need to buddy up with loads of other countries. I'm saying that maybe we should expand our friendships and not just make dicks of ourselves on a global network and hand out pamphlets. That's basically what I'm saying. And do these daggy dad pictures of Scott Morrison hanging Christmas lights and making curries. We should be uncomfortable with our level of participation on the world stage in this pandemic crisis. We should be uncomfortable that we let rhetoric spread that was purely disinformation. We should be uncomfortable with where we are. And if you're not uncomfortable, I don't think you're paying attention. Now, why would I say that I don't think you're paying attention? Here's why I don't think you're paying attention. Because our country has suffered greatly, not just financially, not just in a death rate, but not as much in a death rate as other countries did, but it was still pretty appalling, particularly when you look at the New South Wales numbers that kept appearing. And Victoria had a hard time too. And we should be very, very embarrassed at how we came out looking from this. We could have modelled the New Zealand viewpoint of this. Now, if you have a look, New Zealand, by and large, keeps out of the fray of international discussions in terms of what happens with China and all that other stuff, and sort of wants to be more diplomatic. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't have an opinion on our world stage. I'm simply suggesting that we should do more to be better. We have an opportunity to make this election our final one with this government that has done everything it can to take a wrecking ball to our national security with Christian Porter's donors and using a fixated persons unit to go after comedians. And if you're not checking out Friendly Geordies, I invite you to. And here's why. He is spreading a very powerful message. Not just a little, I mean a lot. And it's very, very powerful. The things he's saying is super important for us all. We can all learn something from Jordan Shanks. I think I wouldn't be doing this tonight if it wasn't for something that he had said on one of his videos. We are in a very unique position as a country. We can follow the New Zealand model and actually really redo how we're doing this. Our population is small, and we can, by and large, do a lot more to combat these issues in being an island. We have no connecting country to us, and we can take... Apologies, I've had a long weekend. We can take an approach that is largely different to how many European nations and the US has responded. But keep in mind, we are left in a very fortunate position. Had Scott Morrison used that very fortunate position and not pissed it away, I think we would have been better. But don't take my word for it. Take theirs. Take their word for it when they couldn't organise the Ruby Princess incident and they actively let a virus go around the country. And because friends of the government was on that boat, they weren't going to quarantine them, they weren't going to anything. They were too busy fighting with the New South Wales Liberals and the federal government was fighting with the New South Wales Liberals. The New South Wales Liberals were blaming the federal government, and it was just one big passing of the buck. We deserve better than that, which brings me to Albo's response to this particular pandemic. He talks about allocated quarantine facilities. He talks about containing the disease and tackling vaccine rates and much, much more, which I think does have an effective approach. But looking at the world as a whole, I think that study bears itself out in real terms. Having these discussions truly needs to be in an open and honest way. We have an opportunity to tell anyone that we know now, hey, this government's kind of trying to kill us off. If you're a pensioner, that's definitely the plan with the healthy welfare card. If you need the old age pension, he's definitely going to call it welfare, despite you paying decades into that for your working life. If you're got children, your daycare bills will be exponentially more expensive underneath the Liberals. But these aren't things that I want you to just look at me and say, hey, how do I know that? I know that because when ALP talk about their daycare policy outlook, it's quite clear that they do have one. And it's quite effective. And we have an opportunity to do something about that. I'm hoping I will reach more people with these live streams. I'm not sure. I don't get an active counter until sort of the end kind of thing. I don't really get to see who is seeing what. And even when I look at the numbers, if you can really, really make sure more people see this and get an understanding of what's going on here, that would be really, really, really helpful. This election cycle needs us all to be a bit responsible about it. And how we discuss this government as a whole, I think, is super important. And we're in really, really dangerous territory now. I want to tell you that this is like any other election cycle, but it isn't. Time is running out for climate change to do its thing. Inflation is playing a major role, and jobs aren't being created. And this government doesn't have a damn clue how to do it. But if you think I'm kidding, ask them what their jobs policy is. They don't have one. Labor does. It talks about creating jobs in apprenticeships and building out the education networks, as well as creating jobs in infrastructure and jobs surrounding training courses for childcare and other things, and significantly reducing the cost of daycare. Now, the reason that that's such an important policy, because 50% of the population is women, and a large portion of them do not get ripped off in terms of superannuation. Now, why does that happen? That happens largely because women do not have the same working life. A lot of them need to opt out to raise children because daycare is too expensive. And I'd like to tell you this story that it goes really, really well. And when the kids get older, it gets better, but it doesn't. Because in that time frame that you've had to have off, you've missed out on super. You've also missed out on various promotions, and you really can't climb the field of your dreams. Um, and we are such a low populated country as a whole. I think we're going to have some problems. Over this pandemic, we've realised fruit rotted on trees because of our immigration stance. Some of that was necessary, but there was a whole nother part to this where it was just insidious. The immigration policy is deplorable. Have a look at the Biabella family being held in Western Australia. It's appalling. If you're not embarrassed by that particular policy, I don't think you're really paying attention. And it's largely important that you do. How we treat immigrants, particularly the evangelicals, they should be embarrassed the most. The most. I mean, there's no question in my mind the evangelicals should be embarrassed by that the most. Because they've got it written in their books about it, welcoming people from other lands and treating them like family. And we just don't do it. We've taken this incredibly racist, awful way of behaving. True. Sorry. Okay. I briefly want to talk to you about the Craig Kelly irony of him being banned from Facebook and appointed Parliament social media inquiry. Yeah, because that's not a laughable position. Choice of the MP who has been criticised for posting misleading vaccine information online raises other committee members' eyebrows. The guy who perpetuated massive COVID disinformation online and does not have a social media account wants the right to tell you how social media should conduct itself. And he got that position. Federal MP Craig Kelly has been permanently banned from Facebook, criticised the online distribution, seriously misleading information about COVID-19 vaccines, has been appointed parliamentary committee looking into social media safety. The appointment raised eyebrows amongst members of parliament after the former Liberal Party member turned Palm United Party member. After it was banned from Facebook and Instagram in April this year, post promoting, I don't know if I've shared my screen, and I so should have. Post promoting hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, questioning the effectiveness of masks. Because why not? If you're going to say something stupid, go in hard. In September, the Therapeutic Goods Administration also issued a statement saying its lawyers had written to Kelly over the text messages and the party had sent out millions of Australians. The TGA alleges that the party breached copyright rules and demanded it stop distributing incomplete extracts of adverse effects reports claiming COVID vaccines, which the TGA believed could be seriously misleading. Wasn't just could be, it outright was. Kelly has since called for social media companies to be reined in and agreed and argued that Facebook's move was in contempt of Parliament, amounted to improper interference. Yeah, you should be allowed to lie to people. That's basically what he wants. And for the Liberals to secure another term, they basically need to tip their hats to idiots. And this is one big bogan idiot that I wouldn't tip my hat to, even if My pants were on fire. And they just hand him these roles like that's a normal thing to do. I'm going to stress not only is that not normal, but we shouldn't normalize the crazies. We shouldn't have this big vote on whether vaccine should be mandated. In 2015, that was already decided. It was no jab, no pay policy. So do not be under any illusion. We already had a policy that worked very effectively. But if you weren't sure about that, have a look at the rates of vaccine take up since that policy was enacted. It wasn't just effective, it was bloody damn well effective. And adding another vaccine to that does not change how the mandate should be viewed. For instance, this is a larger than any other vaccine testing pool. That's an important factor. Do not underestimate how serious that is. But I don't understand why I've needed to explain that vaccine mandates have been around since 2015. That is super duper important. As we talk about everything tonight, I need you to understand that not only have vaccines been mandates been around for a long time, even before the 2015, you couldn't enroll your kids in school without having a mandate. They're facts. And you can't overcome that basic fact that even when I was a child, it was prove that you got vaccinated and show your birth certificate. I'm nearly 40. You know, I remember my mother saying, come on, we're just going to do this. And it was like a little day trip. You go and you get your 5-year-old boosters. You'd be given a lollipop or something at the end of it. And your parents were like, well, that's done. Now you can start school. And you were told that that was the part. That it was exciting to be told, you're vaccinated, you're going to school. Why have we demonized it into this idea that somehow this wasn't as good as any other vaccine? Because it fed a narrative and it fed a fear campaign, and that's all the Conservatives have, is a massive fear campaign of what they don't understand. And you've got to think they've dumbed down their audience to the point that no matter how scandalous they get, they can be under investigation for rape. And it's still like, maybe. Or they can upskirt women, and they're like, oh, maybe it's questionable. No, the whole thing was questionable, and it was questionable from the outset. Do not be under the illusion that this was not the plan all along, to just play one massive screw you to the public. But if you think I'm kidding about its role, I think that you need to spend some time listening to the public and how they're discussing the Liberal Party. They've come out of this unscathed because as a society we haven't held them to account, because there's no media saying this is a scandal too far. You've really gone too far this time. And ICAC's looking at you. Or the refund really is a major fault. We should look at that. Or pork barreling a car park. That means something. Anyway, that's us for tonight. I hope that this 2 hours was informative for you and you're able to show friends and family this sort of broadcasting. Like and subscribe and leave a comment for me to read over. I love hearing from you. Hoping that you like hearing from me too. See you next week. Same time, same place. Thank you. Bye.